Well, hey friends, welcome back to Simply Home and Harvest. I'm gonna do things a little bit different today. We already have our pie made. Actually, it's the next morning and I'm enjoying a piece of this delicious apple crumb pie with a little bit of ice cream. It's melting, of course, but I thought that I would show you the finished product first. It is so delicious. I'm enjoying it with a yummy cup of coffee in one of my favorite mugs. It's a little bit of a dreary Wednesday, but I've got a lot of things going on. Got bread going in the background, our weekly loaf of bread, and then I've been pretty busy with lots of canning, lots of apple sauce, apple butter. The apple butter recipe will be coming your way probably in the next video, but I wanted to go ahead and get this apple crumb pie to you first. Now this recipe is one of those tried and true recipes. I actually found it back in the early years of our marriage, and I think it was like in a Women's Day magazine. I'm pretty sure that's where I found it. If I can find the recipe card, let's see. Here's that recipe card from many years ago. So it was a magazine article that I cut out from Apple Crunch Pie. I don't know what I just called it. Apple Crunch Pie is the name of it. And I'm pretty sure, oh yeah, there it is on the back, WD. So Women's Day magazine is where that came from. Like I said, many years ago. And I have made it over the years. And I don't know, I think it just keeps getting better. But it's a pretty easy to follow recipe. I hope you will try it with your family. So for the last several days, we've been doing all the apple projects. So earlier this week, I did get those apples peeled and cored and sliced and ready for the pie. So you don't see that whole process because I did that all at one time and then I just separated them out for recipes that I was going to use them for. Also, I wanted to show you that this is the pie crust that I use. You get 2 in a box. They're just refrigerated pie crust. I picked these up at Aldi. So you do not have to make your own pie crust. Now that is something that we might do together in the future because homemade pie crust, I still think is better. It's just flakier and butterier. Is that a word? Butterier? Contains a little bit more butter, I guess, depending on how you make it. But I don't think there's anything any better than a homemade flaky pie crust. However, tonight we're not doing that. We are going to use the store-bought pie crust. So this is one of those steps that will save you most of your time would be spent making the pie crust. So if you have the store-bought pie crust, you can whip this pie up in no time. But I hope you will sit back, enjoy this video, and be inspired to make your own apple pie. And also, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Those of you who are following along on this journey, those of you who have subscribed. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. All right, so without further ado, here is the apple crunch pie recipe that you are definitely gonna want to try. Trust me. All right, so nothing really fancy for this apple pie. You'll see we have our pie crust that we're going to use, an already made store-bought pie crust. We had some apples that we'd already prepared and sliced. I did toss them with a little bit of lemon juice, but you can see they're already starting to brown, and that's just what apples do when you start slicing them. We have our brown sugar, we have our white sugar, we have our flour, cinnamon, and nutmeg. So this is a very simple recipe. We will use some cold butter, but I'm going to leave that in the fridge until we need it. And really, this is just such a yummy pie. And like I said, using what you probably already have on hand. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is take your pie crust and unroll it into a pie plate. And you can see this one just did not want to cooperate. It was a little cold, and so it cracked in a couple of spots, but that's okay. There's a little trick I've learned that if you have this happen to you, you can fix it. And that's just to wet your fingers a little, and then you can go in and seal the cracks. You can also let your pie crust come to room temperature a little, and then you can roll it out some, and that'll make it a tad more pliable as well. Now I'm just going around the edges and crimping the edges. I'm not the best at this job, and it was just for us, so I didn't worry too much about making it pretty. So just, you know, you can use a fork even, but just to give a little decorative touch to your pie. And there you see, I'm just dipping my fingers in water, going around, and it just really does work. It seals those cracks up. All right, now that you have your pie shell done, you can set that to the side, and it's time to make the crumb topping for our pie. So all you're going to do is start out with a half a cup of flour, and then 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. Next, we're going to add a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar or white sugar, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and then we're going to take 1 stick of very cold butter, and I like to cut it into small pieces so that we can incorporate that a little bit easier. Now I happen to have a pastry blender tool, which makes this job a little easier, but to incorporate the butter into your flour and sugar mixture, you can use 2 forks, or you can even use your fingertips. And it just takes a few minutes working this way. Basically, you'll want to do this until your mixture forms coarse crumbs that clump together easily. Now we're just going to put our topping to the side, and it's time to start assembling our pie. So you'll want to go ahead and get all of those sliced apples into your bowl, and I know it looks like a lot of apples and probably more than you think will fit in that pie, but trust me, even though we're going to pile it pretty high in there, as it cooks, those apples will cook down and you'll actually wonder what happened to them, but it definitely takes more than you think. Now, I don't believe I showed it, but I've already tossed those apples in about a tablespoon of lemon juice. So now we're just going to work on our filling. And to our apples, we are going to add 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and about 1/8 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Now you're just going to stir that mixture together. And now we're going to add that to our apples. Now you'll really want to toss your apples, get them very well coated in this flour and sugar, and that flour especially will really adhere to your apples, and that's what's going to make your apple pie filling. That's going to give it that thickness. Especially when those apples start to cook down, all those juices mixing with the flour and the sugar are just going to make that perfect texture in your pie. That way, when it cools and sets, it won't be runny. You'll actually have something to sink your teeth into. All right, it's time to layer those apple slices into our pie shell. Now, we want to pile them where they are higher in the center. And you'll see I'm doing that right there. So almost like a heel. Just make them higher in the center. And then you're going to place that crumb topping all over the top. You just want to pile it on there until your pie is completely covered. And I just try to make sure that I can no longer see any apples peeking through. Now, one thing I really like to do is to place my pie on a cookie sheet just to catch any drips that might occur while baking. Now we are going to bake our pie for 15 minutes at 450 degrees, and then after those 15 minutes we're going to reduce our oven temperature to 350 degrees and bake for an additional 45 minutes. Now you're going to want to bake this until your apples are set in the center and that topping is golden brown. Now the hardest part about this pie was keeping my family out of it until they had finished their dinner. I don't know how many times Tim asked if he could cut the pie, and I tried to keep him out of it so that it would set and not fall to pieces because it was still very hot. But you can see that I was not successful. So though I tried really hard to get him to wait so I could get a really pretty picture of a set pie, he just would not cooperate. So there you go. That's just real life. But that pie, absolutely delicious. He raved over it, especially like the crumb topping, which I think that was our favorite part of the pie when I would make it years ago. So didn't get the prettiest picture, but you know what? I think that's a pretty good look at all those layers of apples and that ooey goodness. I hope that you will take the time to make this for your family. You just can't go wrong by topping it with some vanilla ice cream either. And until next time, friends, remember to live simply, use what you have, and enjoy the moments you've been given. See you in the next one.